Have you ever wondered what happens when duty collides with the human heart during the darkest chapters of history? When the world burns around you and everything you believed about right and wrong suddenly becomes as fragile as morning frost, what choice would you make? Tonight, I want to share with you a story that will challenge everything you think you know about love, sacrifice, and the impossible decisions that define us when we face our greatest trials. This is not just another wartime tale. This is the story of two souls who found each other across the most forbidden divide imaginable, where a single moment of compassion could mean the difference between life and death, between honor and betrayal. Picture this. It is October 1943. The war has consumed Europe for 4 brutal years. In a small field hospital just outside the French countryside, where the autumn mist clings to broken trees like memories of better days, a young British nurse named Eleanor works through another endless night. The smell of antiseptic cannot mask the scent of fear that permeates every corner of this makeshift sanctuary. She has seen more death in her 24 years than any soul should witness in a lifetime. Eleanor came to this war believing she understood the world. Good versus evil. Us versus them. The lines seemed so clear when she first pinned that red cross to her uniform. But war has a way of blurring those lines until they disappear entirely, leaving only the raw truth of human suffering. On this particular night, as rain pounds against the hospital windows like bullets against armor, Eleanor hears something that makes her blood freeze. Voices outside, German voices, not the distant sound of enemy patrols, but something much closer, much more dangerous. She extinguishes her lamp and moves toward the window, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through the darkness, she can make out shadows moving between the trees. 3 figures, 2 supporting a third who appears to be wounded. They are heading directly toward the hospital. Every instinct tells her to wake the others to sound the alarm, but something stops her. Perhaps it is the way the wounded man stumbles, the obvious pain in his movements. Perhaps it is the desperation in the voices she can barely hear through the storm. Or perhaps it is something deeper, something that speaks to the very core of why she became a nurse in the first place. The figures reach the hospital entrance. Eleanor can hear them now speaking in urgent whispers. One voice rises above the others, speaking broken English with a thick German accent. "Please, he needs help. He will die without help." Eleanor's hands tremble as she grips the windowsill. This is the enemy. These are the men who have killed her friends, destroyed her world, turned everything she once knew into ash and terror. But the voice she hears carries no malice, only fear and desperate hope. She thinks of her training, of the oath she took. First, do no harm. But what does that mean when helping one person might endanger everyone else? What does it mean when the person asking for help wears the uniform of those who have caused so much pain? The wounded man collapses at the hospital door. In the brief flash of lightning, Eleanor sees his face clearly for the first time. He is young, perhaps younger than herself. His uniform marks him as an officer, but in this moment, he looks like nothing more than a frightened boy far from home. His companions are speaking frantically now, trying to wake him, trying to decide what to do. Eleanor realizes they are about to leave him here and flee into the night. They cannot risk staying any longer, but if they go, he will certainly die. Time slows to a crawl. Eleanor knows that whatever she does in the next few moments will echo through the rest of her life. She can let them go. Let this enemy officer die on her doorstep, and no one would ever question her decision. Or she can open that door and risk everything she has ever believed about right and wrong. She thinks of her brother James, killed at Dunkirk. She thinks of her father, somewhere in the Pacific, fighting this very enemy. She thinks of all the reasons she should turn away, all the perfectly logical explanations for why this man deserves whatever fate awaits him. But then she thinks of something else. She thinks of the first patient she ever lost, a young British soldier who died calling for his mother. She remembers how his eyes looked in those final moments, not like a soldier or a hero, but like a child who was afraid and alone. She sees that same look in the German officer's eyes now. Eleanor moves away from the window. Her feet carry her toward the door as if they have a will of their own. Her hand reaches for the latch, and she knows there is no going back from this moment. Whatever consequences follow, whatever price she must pay, she cannot watch another young man die when she has the power to save him. She opens the door. The two German soldiers look up at her in shock. One immediately reaches for his weapon, but the other stops him with a sharp word. They stare at each other across the threshold, enemy and enemy, predator and prey, but also human and human. "He is badly wounded," one of them says in halting English. "Shrapnel in his chest. Much blood lost." Eleanor looks down at the unconscious officer. His breathing is shallow and labored. Blood has soaked through his uniform and pooled beneath him. From a medical standpoint, his condition is critical, but not hopeless. From every other standpoint, helping him is absolutely impossible. "Why did you bring him here?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nowhere else to go. Our medics are dead. He will die without help." The simple honesty of the statement cuts through her like a blade. There is no deception here, no trick or trap. Just one human being asking another for the most basic act of mercy. Eleanor kneels beside the wounded officer. Up close, she can see how young he really is. Maybe 22, 23 at most. His hair is light brown, matted with sweat and blood. His face, pale from blood loss, carries no trace of the cruelty she has been taught to expect from the enemy. He looks like any of the British soldiers she has treated, like any young man who might have grown up in her own village. "What is his name?" she asks. "Hauptmann Friedrich Weber," one of the soldiers replies. "He is good man, good officer. He saved many of us." Eleanor feels something crack inside her chest. A name makes him real, makes him more than just an abstract enemy. Friedrich Weber, someone's son, someone's beloved, someone who matters to people who will mourn if he dies. The rain continues to pound around them, creating a curtain of sound that might hide their voices but cannot hide them forever. Eleanor knows that discovery means death, not just for Friedrich, but for all of them. The British command has made its position clear regarding collaboration with the enemy. There would be no trial, no explanation, no mercy. But looking at Friedrich's pale face, listening to his labored breathing, Eleanor finds that none of that matters anymore. All her training, all her instincts as a healer, all the fundamental beliefs that made her who she is, they all point in the same direction. "Help me get him inside," she says quietly. The two German soldiers exchange glances of amazement and relief. Together, they lift Friedrich's unconscious form and carry him through the door into the darkened hospital. Eleanor leads them to a small storage room in the back, away from the main wards where other patients sleep. "You must go now," she tells them as they lay Friedrich on a makeshift bed. "If you are found here, we are all dead." One of the soldiers nods and presses something into her hand. Dog tags, Friedrich's identification. "Thank you," he whispers in English. "We will not forget this kindness." They disappear into the night as suddenly as they came, leaving Eleanor alone with an unconscious enemy officer and the weight of a decision that will change everything. She lights a small lamp and begins to examine Friedrich's wounds by its flickering light. The shrapnel has penetrated deep into his chest, missing his heart by mere inches. He has lost significant blood, but the bleeding has mostly stopped. With proper care, he might survive. Without it, he will certainly die before dawn. Eleanor begins to work, her hands moving with practiced efficiency, even as her mind reels with the implications of what she is doing. Every supply she uses, every moment she spends treating him, is an act of treason that could cost her everything. But as she cleans his wounds and begins the delicate work of removing the shrapnel, she finds a strange peace settling over her. This is what she was meant to do. Not to kill or to judge or to hate, but to heal, to save lives regardless of the uniform they wear or the flag they serve. Friedrich stirs as she works, his eyes fluttering open. For a moment, he seems confused, uncertain where he is or what has happened. Then his gaze focuses on Eleanor, on her British uniform, and understanding dawns in his eyes. He tries to speak, but she places a gentle finger to his lips. "Do not try to talk," she whispers. "You need to rest. You are safe here." The irony of those words is not lost on either of them. He is anything but safe, and neither is she. But in this small room, lit by the warm glow of her lamp, with the rain providing cover for their whispered conversation, they have created a tiny sanctuary where different rules apply. Friedrich's eyes never leave her face as she continues to tend his wounds. There is gratitude there, but also confusion and something else. Something that makes Eleanor's heart skip in a way that has nothing to do with fear. "Why?" he manages to whisper despite her admonition to remain silent. It is the question she has been asking herself since the moment she opened that door. Why risk everything for an enemy? Why throw away her safety, her honor, her very life for a man she has never met? Eleanor pauses in her work, meeting his gaze directly. In his eyes, she sees not the face of the enemy she has been taught to hate, but simply another human being who is hurt and afraid and far from home. "Because you asked for help," she says simply. "Help," she says simply. Friedrich's eyes widen at her simple answer as if he cannot quite believe what he is hearing. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The only sounds are the rain against the windows and his labored breathing as Eleanor continues her careful work. "You could have let me die," he whispers, his voice barely audible. "Yes," Eleanor replies without hesitation. "I could have." She finishes cleaning the deepest wound and begins stitching it closed with practiced precision. Each movement of her needle is deliberate, careful, as if she is not just mending flesh, but somehow repairing something larger that has been torn apart by this war. "In my country," Friedrich says quietly, "they tell us you British have no mercy, that you are cold, heartless. They say you would watch a German burn rather than offer him water." Eleanor's hands pause for just a moment before continuing their work. "And what do they tell you about German soldiers in my country?" "The same, I imagine." "Yes, the same." The irony hangs between them like incense in a cathedral, heavy and meaningful. Here they are, enemy and enemy, yet speaking to each other with more honesty than either has shared with their own comrades in months. "What is your name?" Friedrich asks as Eleanor moves to address a smaller wound on his shoulder. She hesitates. Giving her name makes this real in a way that terrifies her. But looking into his eyes, she finds she cannot lie to him. "Eleanor. Eleanor Morrison." "Eleanor," he repeats, and something about the way he says it with his slight German accent softening the syllables makes her name sound like music. It is a beautiful name. "You should rest now," she tells him, but she makes no move to leave his side. "I cannot sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see today's battle. I see my men falling. I see things I wish I could forget." Eleanor understands that burden all too well. She has carried the weight of similar images for months now. "Tell me about home instead," she suggests softly. "Tell me about your life before all this madness." Friedrich's eyes grow distant, looking past her towards something only he can see. "I was a teacher in a small town near Munich. I taught literature to children who believed the world was full of endless possibilities." "Literature?" Eleanor cannot hide her surprise. Somehow she had expected him to speak of military training, of weapons and warfare. "Poetry, mostly. Goethe, Schiller, Heine. I wanted my students to understand that words could build bridges between hearts, that stories could help us see the humanity in everyone we meet." The weight of those words settles over them both. Here is a man who taught about building bridges, now wearing the uniform of those who destroy them. "How did you end up here?" Eleanor asks, though she suspects the answer will pain them both. Conscription. When the war began, teachers were not exempt. They said the fatherland needed every man. Friedrich's voice carries a bitterness that seems to age him beyond his years. "I tried to be a good soldier, to follow orders, to serve with honor. But honor becomes complicated when you witness what war truly means." Eleanor knows exactly what he means. She thinks of her own journey from idealistic young nurse to this moment, sitting in a darkened room treating an enemy soldier while the world burns around them. "I volunteered," she admits quietly. "I thought I was going to save lives, to make a difference. I thought I understood what that meant. And now? Now I know that saving lives sometimes means making impossible choices. It means questioning everything you believed about right and wrong." Friedrich studies her face in the lamplight. "You are not what I expected from an enemy nurse. What did you expect? Someone harder. Someone who would see only the uniform, not the person wearing it." Eleanor finishes the last of her stitching and begins to bandage his wounds. Perhaps that would be easier. Perhaps it would hurt less to see only uniforms instead of people. But then we would lose what makes us human. Their eyes meet across the small space between them, and something passes there that neither expected. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. The acknowledgement that despite everything that should divide them, they are fundamentally the same. "You have gentle hands," Friedrich observes as Eleanor secures the final bandage. "Like my mother's. She was a seamstress before she married my father. She could mend anything that was broken. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She would have liked you, I think. She always said that kindness was the truest measure of a person's character." Eleanor feels tears threatening to spill from her eyes. When was the last time anyone spoke to her about kindness? When did compassion become something to hide rather than celebrate? "You need to drink this," she says, offering him water from a cup. "You have lost much blood." Friedrich struggles to sit up enough to drink, wincing with pain. Without thinking, Eleanor supports his shoulders, helping him to sip the water slowly. The intimacy of the gesture surprises them both. "Thank you," he whispers when he finishes drinking. "You must sleep now. Your body needs rest to heal. Will you stay, just for a little while?" The request is soft, vulnerable in a way that breaks her heart. Eleanor knows she should leave, should return to her duties, should put as much distance as possible between herself and this dangerous situation. But something in his voice, some echo of loneliness that matches her own, keeps her rooted in place. "For a little while," she agrees. Friedrich closes his eyes, but his breathing remains uneven. Eleanor can see the tension in his face, the way his hands clench despite his exhaustion. "You are afraid," she observes gently. "Yes." "Of dying? Of living with what I've seen, what I have done." Eleanor understands that fear intimately. It is the same terror that wakes her in the middle of the night, the same weight that presses on her chest when she remembers all the lives she could not save. "Tell me about your students," she suggests. "Tell me about the poetry you taught them." Friedrich's face softens at the memory. "There was one boy, Hans, only 14, but he had such a gift for words. He wrote a poem about his grandfather's garden, about how flowers could grow even in the darkest soil if someone cared enough to tend them. That sounds beautiful. I wonder if he still writes poetry. I wonder if any of them remember the things we discussed about compassion and understanding, or if the war has taken that from them too." Eleanor reaches out without thinking, her hand covering his where it rests on the blanket. The touch is electric, sending warmth up her arm despite the chill in the room. "Some things survive even war," she tells him. Some truths are too strong to be destroyed. Friedrich opens his eyes and looks down at their joined hands. Is this real? Or am I dreaming from blood loss? It is real. Then I am grateful for this moment, however brief it might be. They sit in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the rain and the steady rhythm of each other's breathing. Eleanor should feel guilty about this connection, this warmth that has nothing to do with medical duty and everything to do with the man himself, but instead, she feels more at peace than she has in months. Eleanor, Friedrich says softly. Yes? When this war ends, when all the madness finally stops, what will you do? She considers the question seriously. Before tonight, her future seemed predetermined. Return home, marry someone suitable, try to forget the things she had seen and done. But now, looking at this man who has somehow become so much more than an enemy in the span of a few hours, that future seems impossibly distant and strangely hollow. I do not know, she admits. Everything I planned for my life was based on a world that no longer exists. I used to dream of returning to my classroom, of teaching again. But I am not the same man who left that school. How can I teach children about beauty and hope when I have seen so much ugliness? Perhaps that is exactly why you should teach them. Perhaps they need to hear from someone who has seen the darkness, but still believes in the light. Friedrich squeezes her hand gently. You have such faith in humanity, even after everything. Not humanity in general, but in individuals like you who choose kindness when hatred would be easier. Like you mean. What you have done tonight, the risk you have taken, it gives me hope that not everything good has been destroyed by this war. Eleanor feels a flush of warmth at his words, but also a sharp pang of fear. This connection they are building, this understanding that seems to grow stronger with each passing moment, it is dangerous in ways that go far beyond the immediate risk of discovery. Friedrich, she begins, but he interrupts her. I know this cannot be. I know that when morning comes, we will return to being enemies. But tonight, in this room, we are just Eleanor and Friedrich, two people who found each other in the darkness. The simplicity of his words cut straight to her heart. Yes, they are enemies by every definition that matters to the world outside this room. But here, now, they are something else entirely, something that neither of them has words to describe, but both understand completely. When you are well enough to travel, Eleanor says quietly, you will have to go. You cannot stay here. It is too dangerous for everyone. I know. And we will probably never see each other again. I know that too. The weight of that reality settles over them like a shroud. This moment, this connection, this impossible tenderness between enemies, it is as fragile as spun glass and just as likely to shatter. Then we must make this time count, Friedrich says softly. Eleanor nods, unable to trust her voice. She has never felt anything like this before, this mixture of joy and sorrow, hope and despair. She's falling for a man she can never have, in a situation that could destroy them both at a time when the world itself seems determined to keep them apart. But even knowing all of that, she cannot bring herself to let go of his hand. Not yet. Not while they still have this moment of peace in the midst of chaos. Outside, the storm continues to rage, masking their whispered conversation and providing a temporary sanctuary from the war that waits beyond these walls. But Eleanor knows that morning will come, and with it, all the impossible choices that this night will have created. For now, though, she allows herself to simply be present in this stolen time, to hold the hand of a man who should be her enemy, but has somehow become something infinitely more precious and infinitely more dangerous. Sleep now, she whispers. I will watch over you. Friedrich's eyes drift closed, but his hand remains firmly clasped in hers. As his breathing deepens and becomes more regular, Eleanor settles back in her chair, preparing for a long vigil. She thinks about the choice she made tonight, about the door she opened, and the path she set herself upon. There is no going back now, no way to undo what has been done or unfeel what has been felt. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new dangers, new impossible decisions. But tonight, in this quiet room with rain drumming against the windows, Eleanor Morrison sits beside Friedrich Weber and wonders if she has just experienced the most important moment of her life. The war rages on outside, but in this small sanctuary they have created, something else entirely has taken root. Something that will grow and flourish despite every force arrayed against it. Something that will test the very limits of what the human heart can endure. Can endure. As the hours pass in that dimly lit sanctuary, Eleanor finds herself studying Friedrich's face in the soft lamplight. Sleep has smoothed away the lines of pain and worry, making him look even younger than before. She notices details she had missed during the urgent medical work. The small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his hair falls across his forehead, the gentle curve of his mouth that suggests someone who smiled often before the war stole that lightness from him. Her training tells her to check his pulse regularly, to monitor his breathing, to watch for signs of fever or infection. But she finds herself simply watching him breathe, marveling at the steady rise and fall of his chest beneath the clean bandages she applied hours ago. What am I doing? She wonders. What madness has taken hold of me? But even as she questions her actions, she knows she would make the same choice again. There was something in his eyes when he first looked at her, something that reached past all the barriers of nationality and uniform straight to her heart. Recognition, perhaps, the acknowledgement of a kindred spirit in the midst of unimaginable darkness. Eleanor thinks of her sister Margaret back in London, probably sleeping peacefully in her own bed without any idea of the impossible situation her sister has stumbled into. Margaret always said Eleanor was too soft-hearted for her own good, too willing to see the best in people even when wisdom demanded caution. Perhaps Margaret was right. Perhaps this kindness will be Eleanor's undoing. But as she watches Friedrich sleep, she finds she cannot regret it. Near dawn, Friedrich stirs restlessly, murmuring something in German that she cannot understand. His forehead is warm to the touch, not quite feverish, but warmer than it should be. Eleanor dampens a cloth with cool water and gently bathes his face, whispering soft reassurances in English that he probably cannot hear but might somehow feel. His eyes flutter open, unfocused at first, then finding her face with obvious relief. "I thought perhaps I had dreamed you," he whispers. "No dream. How do you feel?" "Like I have been trampled by horses, but alive, thanks to you." Eleanor checks his bandages, relieved to see no signs of fresh bleeding. His color is better than it was during the night, though he is still pale and obviously weak. "You need food," she tells him, "and more water. But I cannot bring regular hospital food without raising questions." "I understand. Even water would be a gift." Eleanor rises quietly and slips from the room, moving through the darkened hospital corridors with practiced stealth. The other nurses are either sleeping or tending to patients in the main wards. No one questions her movements. She's always been known for her dedication, for checking on patients at all hours. She returns with bread, cheese, and a thermos of hot tea she managed to prepare without being seen. Simple fare, but Friedrich receives it as if it were a feast. "Tell me about your family," Eleanor says as he eats slowly, carefully. She knows she should not be encouraging conversation, should not be learning more about him than necessary. But she finds herself hungry for details about his life, about the man behind the uniform. "My parents live in the same house where I was born. My father makes furniture, beautiful pieces that will last for generations. My mother tends her garden and worries about her only son fighting in a war she never wanted." Friedrich pauses, a shadow crossing his face. "They have no idea where I am or if I'm alive." "They will see you again," Eleanor says with more confidence than she feels. "Will they? Sometimes I wonder if any of us will survive to see our homes again. This war has already lasted longer than anyone expected. How many more must die before someone decides it has gone on long enough?" Eleanor has wondered the same thing countless times during her long nights in this hospital, watching young men from both sides suffer and die for causes that seem increasingly meaningless when measured against the simple human cost. "What about you?" Friedrich asks. "Who waits for you at home?" "My parents, my sister Margaret, a few friends from nursing school." She hesitates, then adds quietly, "There was a young man, a doctor. We had an understanding before I volunteered for service overseas." Something flickers in Friedrich's eyes, but he only nods. "He is fortunate to have your affection. Had. I wrote to him last month and ended our engagement. May I ask why?" Eleanor considers how to explain feelings she barely understands herself. "He wrote to me about dinner parties and social obligations, about the house we would share and the life we would build together. All perfectly pleasant things. But his letters felt like they were written to a woman who no longer exists. The Eleanor who left England 2 years ago might have been content with such a life. But this Eleanor, the one who has seen what I have seen and done what I have done, she needs something more. What does she need? I do not know. Purpose, perhaps, meaning. Someone who understands that the world is more complicated than we were taught to believe." Friedrich sets down his cup and looks at her with an intensity that makes her heart race. Someone who has also learned that the lines between right and wrong are not always as clear as we hoped they would be. "Yes." They sit in silence for a moment, the weight of that shared understanding settling between them like a bridge across an impossible divide. "Eleanor," Friedrich says softly, "I must ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. What is it? Do you regret helping me? Do you wish you had left me to die at your door?" The question catches her off guard with its directness, but she does not need time to consider her answer. "No, I regret nothing about last night. Even though it goes against everything you were taught about duty and loyalty, perhaps my understanding of duty was too narrow before. Perhaps true loyalty is not to a flag or a uniform, but to the principles that make us human." Friedrich reaches for her hand and she doesn't pull away. His touch is warm and gentle, speaking of tenderness rather than passion, though she feels both stirring within her. "In another time, another world," he says quietly, "I would court you properly. I would bring you flowers and write you poetry and ask your father for permission to walk with you in your garden. In another time, another world, I would welcome such courtship. But not in this one. Not in this one." The sadness in those words is overwhelming, but neither of them looks away. They are acknowledging a truth that is both heartbreaking and somehow beautiful in its honesty. "When I am strong enough to travel," Friedrich continues, "I will leave this place and return to my unit if I can find them. Or I will try to make my way home, if that is possible. And I will continue working in this hospital, saving lives when I can, watching young men die when I cannot. And we will carry this memory with us. Yes. This moment when two enemies discovered they were not enemies at all." Eleanor feels tears threatening again, but she blinks them back. There will be time for tears later, when he is gone and she is alone with the memory of this impossible night. "Tell me something beautiful," she requests. "Tell me one of the poems you taught your students." Friedrich closes his eyes, and when he speaks, his voice takes on a different quality, the cadence of someone who has spent years sharing the power of words with eager young minds. "There is a poem by Goethe that I always loved. It speaks of two hearts that find each other across vast distances, drawn together by something stronger than the forces that would keep them apart. He recites the verses in German first, the words flowing like music in the quiet room. Then he translates them into English, his accent making the familiar language sound exotic and beautiful. The poem speaks of love that transcends boundaries, that recognizes no divisions of nation or creed. The poet believed that such love was a glimpse of the divine, a reminder that beneath all our differences, we are fundamentally the same. Do you believe that? Before this war, I was not certain. But sitting here with you, holding your hand while you tend my wounds with such gentleness, how can I doubt it? We are proof that such connection is possible, even in the darkest times. Eleanor brings his hand to her lips and presses a soft kiss to his knuckles, a gesture so tender and intimate that it surprises them both. Friedrich. Yes. I want you to know that whatever happens after this, however this war ends, I will never forget you. I will never forget this night or what you have taught me about the possibility of finding light in the darkness. Nor will I forget you, Eleanor Morrison. You have given me back something I thought I had lost forever. What is that? Hope. Faith in human goodness. The belief that kindness still exists in this world. The first pale light of dawn is beginning to filter through the small window, casting everything in a silvery glow that makes their situation feel even more dreamlike and fragile. Morning is coming, Eleanor observes reluctantly. Yes, and with it, all the complications we have been holding at bay. You are still too weak to travel. You need at least another day, perhaps two, before you will be strong enough to walk any distance. Can you keep me hidden that long? I will find a way, but it will be dangerous. The other staff will notice if I am absent too often. And there are regular inspections, searches for deserters or enemy infiltrators. Then perhaps I should go now, while I still can. I will not be responsible for putting you in greater danger. You are not going anywhere in your condition. You would collapse before you reach the edge of the hospital grounds. Friedrich starts to argue, but Eleanor cuts him off with a gentle finger to his lips, the same gesture she used the night before. This is my decision to make, my risk to take. I will not abandon you now simply because the situation is becoming more complicated. Why? Why are you willing to risk so much for me? Eleanor considers the question seriously. Why indeed? What is it about this man that has made her willing to throw away everything she has worked for, everything she believes in? Because you asked for help as a human being, not as a soldier. Because you teach poetry to children and speak of building bridges with words. Because you look at me and see Eleanor, not just a British nurse or an enemy to be defeated. Because you make me feel less alone in the world. The words come out as barely more than a whisper, but they carry the weight of absolute truth. Friedrich's eyes widen and she sees her own feelings reflected there, the same mixture of joy and terror and desperate longing. Eleanor, do not say it, please. Do not say what we are both thinking, because once those words are spoken, there will be no taking them back. Perhaps some words are too important to leave unspoken. Perhaps some words are too dangerous to survive in a world like this one. They look at each other across the small space between them, both knowing that they have already crossed a line from which there is no return. The words may remain unspoken, but the feelings are there in every glance, every touch, every moment of shared understanding. Eleanor forces herself to stand, to break the spell that has held them captive through the long night. I must go. The morning shift will begin soon, and I need to be seen doing my regular duties. When will you return? Tonight, after the others are asleep. I will bring more food and check your wounds. Eleanor. She pauses at the door, not trusting herself to look back at him. Thank you for everything. She nods without turning around and slips from the room, leaving Friedrich alone with his thoughts and the lingering scent of her perfume. As she walks through the hospital corridors, Eleanor feels as if she is moving through a dream. Everything looks the same as it did yesterday, but she knows that she herself has been fundamentally changed by the events of the night. The other nurses greet her normally, making casual conversation about the patients and the day's duties ahead. No one suspects that she has just spent the night in intimate conversation with an enemy officer, that her heart is racing with feelings she has never experienced before, that she has committed an act of treason that could result in her execution if discovered. She goes through the motions of her regular duties, checking on patients, distributing medications, changing dressings, but part of her mind remains in that small storage room with Friedrich, replaying every word they spoke, every moment their eyes met, every instant when their hands touched. What am I becoming, she wonders. What kind of woman risks everything for a man she met only hours ago? But even as she questions her own sanity, Eleanor knows she will return to that room tonight. She will continue to care for Friedrich until he is well enough to leave. And when he does leave, she will carry the memory of this impossible connection for the rest of her life. The war may have made enemies of their nations, but it has also created something beautiful and unprecedented between two souls who found each other in the darkness. Something that will endure long after the last shots are fired and the last treaties are signed. Something that proves love can bloom even in the most barren soil if someone cares enough to tend it. The hours crawl by with agonizing slowness. Eleanor moves through her duties like a woman walking underwater, her body present but her thoughts consumed entirely by the man hidden away in that small room. Every footstep in the corridor makes her heart leap with terror. Every unexpected sound sends ice through her veins. The weight of her secret presses down upon her like a physical burden, making even the simplest tasks feel monumental. She tends to Private Collins, a young Welsh boy with a shattered leg, but finds herself thinking of Friedrich's gentle voice reciting German poetry. She changes the dressing on Sergeant Murphy's arm wound while remembering the careful way Friedrich spoke her name, making it sound like something precious and rare. When Captain Henderson asks her about supply inventories, she nods and responds appropriately while her mind replays those moments when Friedrich's hand held hers in the darkness. "Nurse Morrison, are you quite well?" asks Sister Catherine, the head nurse, studying Eleanor's face with concern. "You look rather pale this morning." "Just tired, sister. It was a long night with the new admissions." Indeed it was. That thunderstorm certainly made everything more difficult. I heard rumors that German patrols were spotted in the area during the worst of it. Eleanor's blood turns to ice water in her veins, but she manages to keep her expression neutral. "German patrols? How close?" "Close enough that Colonel Whitmore has ordered additional security measures. We are to report any suspicious activity immediately, no matter how trivial it might seem." "Of course, sister." "These are dangerous times, Nurse Morrison. We must all remain vigilant. The enemy is cunning and desperate. They will use any opportunity to infiltrate our lines or gather intelligence." Eleanor nods, fighting to keep her hand steady as she continues organizing medical supplies. If only Sister Catherine knew that at this very moment, one of those desperate enemy soldiers lies hidden mere yards away, depending entirely upon Eleanor's continued deception for his survival. The morning drags on endlessly. Every minute feels like an hour, every hour like a day. Eleanor finds herself checking the clock obsessively, counting down the endless stretch of time until she can safely return to Friedrich. She worries about his condition, about whether he might be developing a fever, about what she will do if someone discovers him during her absence. During the lunch break, she manages to slip away briefly, carrying medical supplies under the pretense of checking inventory in the storage areas. She opens the door to Friedrich's hiding place just enough to peek inside, relief flooding through her when she sees him sitting up, looking significantly stronger than he had at dawn. "How do you feel?" she whispers. "Better. Much better, thanks to your care. She cannot linger, cannot risk being missed for too long, but she takes just a moment to study his face. The color has returned to his cheeks, and his eyes are clear and alert. He is healing well, which should make her happy, but instead fills her with an inexplicable sadness. The stronger he becomes, the sooner he will leave. Tonight, she promises, then closes the door and hurries back to her duties. The afternoon brings new challenges. Dr. Pemberton, the chief medical officer, announces that there will be a thorough inspection of all hospital facilities the following day. German reconnaissance planes have been spotted overhead, and command is concerned about possible intelligence gathering or infiltration attempts. Every room, every closet, every storage area will be searched, he declares to the assembled staff. We are looking for any sign of enemy presence or suspicious activity. Nothing is to be overlooked. Eleanor's heart hammers against her ribs as she realizes the impossible situation she now faces. Friedrich must be gone before tomorrow's inspection, but he is still too weak for extended travel. If he is discovered during the search, they will both be executed as traitors. She forces herself to maintain a calm exterior while her mind races through possibilities. Where can he go? How can she help him escape without being seen? The questions multiply faster than she can process them, each one more frightening than the last. That evening, as the hospital settles into its nighttime routine, Eleanor finally makes her way back to the storage room. She carries a basket of food and fresh bandages, but her mind is consumed with the urgent news she must share. Friedrich looks up as she enters, his face brightening with genuine pleasure at seeing her. The warmth in his expression makes her heart skip, but she forces herself to focus on the immediate danger. We have a problem, she says without preamble. There will be a complete search tomorrow. Every room in the hospital. You must leave tonight. The light in Friedrich's eyes dims as he processes this information. I see. How thorough will this search be? Completely thorough. They are looking specifically for German infiltrators. If you are found here, we are both dead. Friedrich nods slowly, accepting this reality with the same quiet courage he has shown throughout his ordeal. Then I will go. I am strong enough now to make it some distance, especially under cover of darkness. But where will you go? How will you survive? You have no supplies, no maps, no knowledge of the local area. I will manage somehow. I cannot allow my presence to endanger you any longer. Eleanor sets down her basket and kneels beside his makeshift bed. There might be another way. I know of an abandoned farmhouse about 2 miles from here. It has been empty since the family fled last year. If you could make it that far, you could hide there while you regain your full strength. 2 miles through enemy territory with fresh wounds and no equipment. It is possible, but risky. Everything about this situation is risky, but it might give you a better chance than trying to reach your own lines immediately. Friedrich reaches out and takes her hand, the gesture now familiar and comforting despite the desperate circumstances. Eleanor, I want you to know that whatever happens tonight, these past 2 days have been the most meaningful of my life. Do not speak as if this is goodbye. You will survive this. You will make it home to your students and your poetry and your parents' house. And you, what will become of you when this war finally ends? Eleanor has been avoiding that question, afraid to examine too closely what her future might hold. I suppose I will return to England, try to rebuild some kind of normal life. But will you be happy with normal after everything you have experienced, everything you have learned about yourself? The question cuts straight to her deepest fears. How can she return to the quiet, predictable existence that once seemed so appealing? How can she marry some suitable gentleman and settle into domestic routine when she has tasted something so much more profound? I do not know, she admits. Perhaps normal is no longer possible for people like us. People like us. People who have seen too much, who have learned that the world is far more complicated than we were taught to believe, who have discovered that the human heart recognizes no boundaries of nationality or uniform. Friedrich brings her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her palm. The intimate gesture sends warmth racing up her arm and straight to her heart. Eleanor, there is something I must tell you before I go. Something I should have said last night, but was too afraid to speak aloud. Friedrich, please. Some things are better left unsaid. Not this. Not when we may never see each other again. He looks directly into her eyes, his gaze steady and unflinching. I love you. I know it is impossible. I know it is madness, but I love you with every fiber of my being. The words hang in the air between them like a declaration of war and a prayer for peace all at once. Eleanor feels her carefully constructed emotional barriers crumble completely. I love you too, she whispers, the words torn from her heart despite every rational objection her mind can raise. I love you so much it terrifies me. They stare at each other in the lamplight, both overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they have just admitted. The love between them is real and powerful and completely impossible. It exists in defiance of every law, every boundary, every reasonable expectation of how the world should work. Friedrich reaches up and gently touches her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone with infinite tenderness. My darling Eleanor, my impossible, wonderful, courageous Eleanor. We cannot have this, she says, even as she leans into his touch. We cannot build anything on this feeling. Perhaps not, but we can acknowledge it, we can honor it. We can carry it with us as proof that even in the darkest times, beauty and love still find a way to exist. Eleanor closes her eyes, memorizing the feeling of his hand against her skin. Tomorrow he will be gone, and this moment will become nothing more than a memory. But what a memory it will be. I wish we had met in peacetime, she says softly. I wish I could have known you as Friedrich the teacher, not Friedrich the enemy soldier. In peacetime, we never would have met at all. You would have stayed in England. I would have remained in Germany. This war, terrible as it is, brought us together. What cruel irony, that war should be the instrument of our meeting and the guarantee of our separation. Friedrich pulls her closer, and she does not resist. They hold each other carefully, mindful of his injuries, but desperate for this physical confirmation of their emotional connection. Eleanor can feel his heart beating against her cheek, can smell the faint scent of soap and bandages and something uniquely him. If we survive this war, he says quietly, if we both live to see peace restored, will you remember me kindly? Eleanor pulls back just enough to look into his eyes one final time, memorizing every detail of his face in the flickering lamplight. I will remember you always, not as an enemy, but as the man who taught me that love recognizes no uniform, no flag, no boundary, save those we create in our own hearts. As Friedrich disappears into the darkness toward the abandoned farmhouse, carrying with him a piece of Eleanor's soul, we are left with a profound truth about the human condition. In our darkest hours, when the world seems consumed by hatred and division, love still finds a way to bloom. Two hearts discovered that beneath the uniforms of war beat the same hopes, the same dreams, the same capacity for tenderness that makes us fundamentally human. Their story reminds us that even in impossible circumstances, we can choose compassion over cruelty, understanding over hatred, and love over fear. Perhaps that choice, made quietly in countless moments throughout history, is what ultimately redeems us all.